I want to add a leaderboard to my app. I built a little quiz language app, and previously I added a scoring system to make it more addicting with that gamification. Now I want I want you to be able to compare yourself with your friends and the rest of the world and see what your score is compared to everybody else's. And so for now, I'm adding a global leaderboard. To build a simple REST API, I could have picked any backend language, but I decided to go with Phoenix Elixir. And the question is if this was a good decision. But what was this process like? Well, let's find out. I'm gonna dive into the code now. So enjoy. Let's start with the Phoenix backend. So there's not too much to talk about because the changes I did myself are minuscule. Rather, I generated a bunch of things via the terminal, and this then gave me a bunch of files that I very slightly modified, and then I got it working. In actuality, because I have so little knowledge about Phoenix and Elixir, it took me many hours because there was a small minor problem and I could not find a solution. And then at some point I had an inkling and I fixed it. Basically, I was having a post request to update the leaderboard, and I sent the shape directly. So I sent an object containing the user and the score, but I had to send an object containing the leaderboard object, which then contained the user and the score. And so this cost me so much time. Oh well, what can you do about it? Another problem that I run into was that I'm not so familiar with the gen commands. So here you can see I have Phoenix gen JSON store, and this works well. Like it generates a bunch of files, but some files are missing. Namely, I think the store files are missing, and it will throw you a vague error, like some struct doesn't exist or something. And turns out you can, in this command here, you can see that there is a context instead of the JSON. And so this will fix the problem. And the other part is redundant, which is a little bit odd to me, but oh well, I'll take it. So these are the two commands that I use, and these two commands, they gave me everything I needed. As you can see, it's leaderboard, then snake case, and then user and score. So let's start with this leaderboard module. I'm not sure yet about all the, how much worth or like what the role of the different files are. I'm still trying to learn this. So I call this thing hello world because it's just sort of an experiment. I'm regretting a little bit calling it hello world, but I was not sure if it would work at all. And so we have this leaderboard here, and then we have a primary key that I added. So this was not there before, and I'm glad I added it because otherwise you run into weird problems, or maybe you don't, but I seem to have been running into weird problems. And so this change set here seems to be the reason, like where everything gets validated. This is the schema. Now here we are at the store. The store seems to be auto-generated or something with just everything. So everything will be added here, which I find to be an odd choice. So I also added headwords, for that are not really related to this project, but they are a little bit. And yeah, so you can see that you can list the leaderboard. I changed, this is one of the few changes I did. I changed you can see this is the comment I commented out was there. And I know this is sort of bad practice, but I didn't want to have a custom route for now. I just wanted to have the top 15 people, or maybe 30. I could change this easily later. So that is what I changed. So this is the router. It caused me a lot of troubles and problems because this is where it threw the error. And then after a lot of time, I found out what the problem was, namely that I had to package the object into this other object. And I'm also really unfamiliar with the syntax. I've been reading up a little bit on the documentation. However, yeah, there's a lot of like new syntax. So I'm not sure what this all does here and what the reason and so on and so forth is. It also seems to be rather difficult to log things out, and it seems like Elixir Phoenix is heavily inspired by, so I've heard Erlang, but also it seems to be inspired by Ruby on Rails. However, they had this utility called bybug, which is very useful to debug things, and I googled for this, and it seems to not exist with Phoenix. Finally, at the end, it wasn't really working because of the core. So I had to enable cores, and while it was enabled somewhere else and should have worked, namely in the router, which I will go to next, I had to, at the end, also add it to this endpoint.ex file. So here you can see where else I had to add it. I also enabled this origin. I'm not sure if that's needed, still have to try that. Just try to, many things to get it working, and at the end, things were working, but I'm not sure what exactly made it working. And here we have the leaderboard resource. So everything all in all pretty straightforward. On the front end, we start off with sending the score to the server. And so we have this handle score function, and we send things to localhost 4000 API leaderboard, and with a method of post. This is what got me. First, I only had I didn't have this, I only had this little object. Okay, so next I have a modal, and because I already have a different modal for the different languages, I have to rename everything here. And then this is the modal. I modified an existing modal I had to accept children, so that I can just pass the children down here, like so. First, we have an input, and this input, once the user has set the name, like so, it will then enable the button that is here. So this both sits inside the modal, and as you can see, I did this because TypeScript complained, and basically I'm converting so if there is an empty string, it should disable it. If there is not an empty string, it means there's a username. The button can be clicked on, and this will then be a link that leads to a different page where the leaderboard is on. And at the same time, it will fire off this handle send score function, which then actually sends the score over. And finally, we have this button here, which has the little image, and you can see this here on the side. So when I click on it, I can enter my name, test user 123, and it will send me to the leaderboard. And you can see I've already have some users here that have been busily using the app in the local host. To display this leaderboard, we need a nice leaderboard component. Here we go with that. And initially I'm fetching the data. There's many ways to fetch initial data in React, but I'm really tired of using the use effect hook. And I've been hearing people praise use query by the tan stack, the React query, so much. People are praising it so much, I wanted to use it for this case, and it seems to be fine. So here we have data and it's loading. I'm not bothering with the error state just yet. I'm using Axios to call the API to get the list. I have my final data. I think this concoction is really weird. I have to work on that. Data is just really strange, this nesting. We have the loading state here, and then we finally want to return the proper thing. Here we use some Chakra UI components to center and lay out everything. And mostly this is a link to go back, and which I have to make more beautiful, and the leaderboard table. Initially I tried to go with a VStack, but that looked ugly. I tried to go with a simple grid, but that looked also ugly, and then I gave up and I went with this table, which looks really nice. And You can see here I have it in the same file. I know that's not the best practice, but I agree. I think it's fine in this case because when things get messy, you can always refactor them, and I just quickly want to have different components here. So in this case, this should be fine for a private project. And if this was my work, I would probably put into a subcomponent. Anyways, I'm having this one here. So here is my table with all the stuff around it. And so we have the header here, rank, user, and score, and we finally used the leaderboard prop to map over the rows. We use the ID as the key. We have to increment the rank by 1 so that it doesn't start at 0. And we have the user and the score. While I'm using TypeScript, I'm using any, which is a deadly sin, but it's fine for this purpose. I will obviously probably fix that later, but yeah, I think so far that's it. So here we then have our final result. We have this leaderboard. Let's quickly go back. Let's successfully answer some questions. I have a score of 4 now, but I want to get it a bit higher. The more I get right in a row, the higher my point score becomes. So let's beat the... Ah, shit. I'm not smart enough. So now we have a really high score. And so I initially had everything on here, but it was really cluttered. So I added this little icon to activate this modal. You cannot go to the leaderboard. And instead I'm gonna the best there with the spelling error. So here we are on the top of the rank, beating Mike, that silly noob. And yeah, so really interesting now, building a little leaderboard. Pretty nice to do it with Elixir, where you can just auto-generate everything. Yeah, so that's the app. As you could see, the syntax of Phoenix is, to me, really bizarre, might be the wrong word, but it's really new and it's really tough to read, especially with the controller logic or all this boilerplate from that Phoenix framework. So it's really difficult to understand what is going on, and if something is broken, it's tough to debug it, and it's difficult to see the general flow and application logic and so on and so forth. I spent hours trying to debug why my post request wouldn't work when I found out that I had sort of nested, or I did the opposite. My new user, leaderboard user, was too flat and I had to nest him more, and then after this it worked perfectly. Also, adding the course was really bizarre. Like, you had to add it on multiple places. However, the code generation meant it was really easy to set up, and I basically had to do nothing, and just everything worked out of the box after sending some terminal commands. This to me means that once I get comfortable with Phoenix, it should be really easy to quickly build prototypes, because it's so easy to scaffold something up. I hope you found this as interesting as I did. In any case, that's the end of the video. I hope you found this cool. So have a nice day.